Here on Family Wheels, we drive everything from econo-boxes to super luxury vehicles, but this is something very different. This is the car that changed the world, literally. It's the Ford Model T, this one from 1912. Let's go for a drive today on Family Wheels. This is literally a story of family wheels because the antique car you see is owned by my brother-in-law, Mark Schneider. Mark and his siblings grew up in a Ford Model T owned by his late father. And like his dad, Mark tours around various places in southern Ontario, usually with fellow members of the Model T Club or other enthusiast groups. The interview you're about to see had to be conducted with the car stopped and turned off, and here's why. That's the sound of the Model T's electrical system, sending charges to the spark plugs in aid of internal combustion. Because the electrics are in a wooden box on the floor between us, there was nothing to stop its electromagnetic energy from zapping my 21st century video camera. Also, the vertical windshield shook so much that digital stabilization couldn't save the picture. In fact, a couple of not quite tightened screws caused this to happen.
They would go and see Aunt Martha on a Sunday afternoon and carry a couple cans of gas, some water, a spare tire.
You win this round, old technology. Your support keeps Family Wheels rolling, so do like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're feeling really generous, watch one of those short ads. It all helps. And so, on a sweltering day, we pulled over to have a little chat. Your father was a car collector, and you inherited another Model T from him?
Yes, actually his very first car was a 1918 Model T that he picked up after the war in 1947. As you know, car production was discontinued during the war, so any old clunker you could find became your mode of transportation. So as he finished high school, that was his first vehicle. He loved it so much he got into the emerging antique car hobby at that point, and we've been in it ever since.
What's the story behind this car? He owned it, but it wasn't like we see it today.
No, he picked this up as a true barn find in 1956. He split the cost of the purchase with his brother, my uncle. My dad bought my uncle out in the 1980s, and it sat unrestored for close to 60 years, and my son and I decided to restore the car completely and just finished it in 2019.
How about for you and your son Reed? How many years of actually working on it to get it up to this fine state?
We spent about 9 years in total. Did a lot of the work ourselves. We sent a lot of the mechanical work out to some other hobbyists, and we had it professionally restored by a paint and auto specialist in the Oshawa area.
And how much financial pain is involved in this?
Depends on how far you want to go, but as any owner of an antique vehicle will tell you, when it's all said and done, you forget the cost because they're truly priceless.
And you have many friends in the car hobby.
Yes, it's quite an extensive worldwide hobby, especially specific to different marques. In the case of the Model T, there's still a couple 100,000 of them around the world. Henry, as you know, made 15 million of them between 1908 and 1927, and there's quite a few survivors right around the globe.
I don't see a trunk in the back. There are no windows here, and yet in the other Model T that you own in 1918, your mother and father, 5 children, including your sister, my wife, were toured around the countryside in one of those things. Now that's some kind of Family Wheels.
It was Family Wheels. They were really designed for a family of 5. There was no trunk. A lot of things were stuffed in the back seat, picnic baskets, and all your groceries for the day, and off you went.
But what was it like for a family 109 years ago to go out for a drive in this vehicle?
Well, it was quite an adventure. Of course, you have to remember that most of the people that were buying these vehicles were transferring from a horse and buggy into their very first mechanized mode of transportation. So they were learning as they went. A big trip for them would be 25 or 30 miles on a Sunday afternoon. You always carried some gas and water with you. Spare tire on the running board quite often. The tires and tubes were of dubious quality, and gas stations were few and far between. So it was quite an adventure traveling along the dusty old roads at 25, 30 mile an hour.
Speaking of gas, I don't see a gas cap on this car anywhere. Where does the gasoline go?
Well, we're sitting on the gas tank. The external gas fillers were put in later in the 20s, but this 10-gallon tank is right under our seat. So when you pulled up to your manual gas pump, you'd get out, raise the seat, unscrew the cap, fill it up by hand, and carry on your merry way.
I don't see any windshield wipers.
No, they were an option. Quite often these cars were not really run too much in inclement weather. They did have manual wipers in some cases, but you were hand operated, so it kept you quite busy operating the manual wiper and driving as you went.
And the turn signals, that's you.
That's us. Just remember your bicycle signals.
Now, with automobiles built in the lifetime of everybody watching this program, the pedal on the left is the clutch. Pedal in the middle is the brake. Pedal on the right is the accelerator. Not so in the Model T. Mark, what do these do?
Your left pedal is your clutch, high and low gear. It's a planetary transmission. The middle pedal is reverse, and your right pedal is your brake.
But where's the accelerator?
Your accelerator is really here on the right, and your spark lever controls your distributor or the timer on the front of the engine. So that advances and retards the timing of the engine. This is your advanced accelerator. Full down like that, we call that Model T cruise control. That will be your top speed at about 30 mile an hour back in the day.
Now, we know this is a really old car because it's got running boards and these brass plates to step on. But Mark, what's this brass cylinder in the middle?
This device is known as a carbide generator. Underneath, at the bottom of the tank, would be a little basket of a carbide powder. The top half of the tank would contain some water. As the water dripped slowly into the powder below, it produced a gas similar to acetylene, which would follow the red rubber tube up to the headlights. The other side lights and tail lights were powered by good old kerosene with a wick.
And what about the horn?
The horn was a different kettle of fish. Here we are on the left side. Up until the electric horn was installed in 1918, you had a manual horn off to the side to your horn that was mounted on the front of the vehicle.
Basically a Harpo Marx affair.
Harpo made it very popular, yes.
This car, you told me, was made in Canada.
Yes, this one was built in Walkerville, Ontario, which, as we would today's world know it as Windsor. That was the very first branch plant that Ford set up. One of the reasons he went to the Walkerville, Ontario area was so that he could get around a lot of the export duties that were imposed on a lot of the manufacturers to get to the worldwide market. So if he had a plant in the British Commonwealth, which he did in Walkerville, they were allowed to ship at a much reduced cost to anywhere in the British Empire and eventually all through Europe and Africa and Asia.
But how did the Model T change the automotive world and society?
Well, really what it allowed people to do, it was a very economical car, and that was Mr. Ford's goal from day one, to make, as he called it, a car for the masses. So price-wise, this car came in at $750, which is still a substantial amount of money, but when a lot of the luxury cars were going for $2,000 or $3,000, this was at the very bottom of the price point.
One more note about Mark's Model T. It is, of course, a convertible, but the top is a complicated thing straight out of the horse and buggy era, a collection of cloth and metal hoops and fastener pins and leather tie-down straps. It's literally and figuratively more than a century removed from today's convertibles that raise or lower in a handful of seconds at the push of a button. Well, that's our look at the Model T, in this case in 1912. The car that set the automotive industry up for what it is today. Special thanks to its owner, Mark Schneider. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm Richard Detman. See you next time on Family Wheels.